Episode 1. The Entrance. The group, consisting of 4 friends, stood before the tall, rusted gates of the abandoned hospital. The moonlight cast eerie shadows on the cracked stone walls, giving the place an ominous feeling. They had heard the rumors. This hospital, once a place of healing, was now home to nothing but the dead and the forgotten. Yet, they were determined to spend the night there, testing their courage against the dark history that lay behind those iron gates. "I don't know about this," Lena muttered, glancing nervously at the darkened building. "Are we sure? This is a good idea." Mark grinned, his flashlight casting long shadows across his face. "It's just an old hospital, Lena. What's the worst that could happen?" But even as he spoke, the wind picked up, and the gates creaked ominously, as if warning them to turn back. They stepped forward, pushing the heavy gates open, and the night swallowed them whole. As the gates closed behind them, it felt like the world outside was shut off completely. The moment they crossed the threshold, the air grew colder. Lena shivered as she pulled her jacket tighter around her. "I don't like this," she whispered. Mark's confident smile faded. "We've come this far. We're staying the night. No turning back." They made their way inside, the echo of their footsteps bouncing off the cold, empty walls. In the distance, they heard a strange noise, like something scraping against the floor. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded, and the front doors slammed shut, locking them inside. "Guys, we need to leave," Rachel said, her voice quivering. "Now." But it was too late. The door was locked, and the only way out was through the darkness. Episode 2. The First Signs. The group stood in the lobby, staring at the eerie, abandoned hospital before them. The hallway stretched out in both directions, dimly lit by flickering lights. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of decay filled their noses. As they ventured deeper into the building, strange sounds echoed from above. Faint footsteps, whispers, and the occasional flicker of light. Their hearts raced, but they pressed on. "What is that sound?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark, always the leader, seemed unfazed. "It's probably just the wind or the pipes. This place is falling apart. We're fine." But deep down, they all knew something wasn't right. The further they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The hospital felt alive, like it was watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. Lena's nerves were on edge, and every shadow seemed to move when she wasn't looking. Then they heard it. A voice over a broken speaker system. "Get out! Leave! The rooms are waiting." Rachel froze. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. The others nodded, but before they could say anything, the light above them flickered and went out completely. The group hurried down the hallway, their flashlights shaking in their hands. The further they ventured, the colder it became, and then they saw it. At the end of the hall, a door opened just enough for a shadow to slip through. Something was there. But before they could investigate, the door slammed shut. "Let's get out of here," Mark said, his voice strained. But the door didn't open. Episode 3. The Ascent. The group continued down the hallway, the sounds of the abandoned hospital amplifying in their ears. They made their way to the stairs, deciding to check the upper floors. The moment they reached the second floor, the air grew even colder, the walls stained with years of neglect. There were rooms everywhere, rooms that once housed patients, now long forgotten. As they passed each door, they noticed strange markings on the walls, and some of the rooms had their doors wide open. In one room, Lena stopped in front of a desk. There were old medical charts scattered on the floor, and one had the name Charles W. written on it. "Paranoia. Nighttime screams," Lena read aloud, her voice faltering. This is from years ago." Mark walked over and picked up a photo from the desk. It was faded, but it showed a man sitting in a bed with a vacant expression. The photo seemed to pulse with a strange energy. "Maybe we should keep moving," Rachel suggested, a chill running down her spine. But it was too late. As Lena turned to leave, she felt something cold brush past her. Turning back, she saw a shadow in the corner of the room. It was standing perfectly still. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Lena gasped. "Did you see that?" "Let's get out of here," Mark urged, grabbing Lena's arm and pulling her toward the door. But as they reached the hallway, a low whisper filled the air. "Stay." The group froze. "We have to go," Mark said, his voice suddenly weak. "We have to get out of here," but the door behind them slammed shut. Episode 4. The Descent. The group stood frozen, unable to move. The sound of the door slamming shut echoed in the cold, lifeless hallway. They all looked at each other, eyes wide with fear. The voice that had whispered, "Stay," still rang in their ears, a constant reminder of the danger they were in. "We need to find another way out," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lena nodded. "But how? The windows are sealed and the doors won't open." Rachel's eyes darted nervously. "We can't stay here. We have to keep moving." Without another word, they turned and made their way down the dark hallway. Each step felt like 1,000 pounds, the weight of fear pressing down on their shoulders. As they moved deeper into the hospital, the silence grew heavier. The only sound was the echo of their footsteps and the occasional drip of water from a leaky pipe. They reached another set of stairs, this one leading further down into the depths of the hospital. Mark hesitated, but then made the decision to descend. "We have no choice," he said. "We'll check the basement." The staircase creaked under their weight, and the air grew colder as they moved down. The basement door was old and rusty, but it opened with ease. Inside, the room was pitch black, save for the faint glow of their flashlights. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them in the dark. "Not again," Rachel gasped. The room seemed to close in on them. The air felt thick, and the temperature dropped even further. Then they heard it, a soft tapping noise coming from somewhere in the dark. Episode 5. The Shadow. The group turned toward the sound, their hearts pounding in their chests. Every shadow seemed to move, shifting and flickering in the dim light. "What is that?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. Mark held his flashlight out in front of him, but the light barely pierced the thick darkness. "Stay close," he whispered. "We don't know what's down here." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the far corner of the room. The group jumped, and Rachel screamed, covering her mouth in fear. "Stay calm," Mark said, trying to keep his composure. "We need to stick together." They cautiously moved toward the source of the sound. As they approached, they noticed something strange. There were claw marks on the walls, deep gouges that seemed to stretch all the way down to the floor. "What happened here?" Lena whispered, fear evident in her voice. Before anyone could answer, a shadow darted across the far wall. It was quick, too quick to be human. "Run!" Mark shouted. The group turned and bolted for the door, but as they reached it, the lights went out completely. They were plunged into darkness. A low growl echoed from the shadows. Episode 6. The Eyes. The group stumbled through the darkness, their hands outstretched in front of them as they searched for the door. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the growl they had heard was getting louder. "Where's the door?" Rachel cried, panic rising in her voice. "I don't know," Mark shouted back. "Just keep moving." Suddenly, a faint glow appeared in the distance. It was coming from a set of eyes, eyes that glowed unnaturally, like two bright orbs in the dark. Lena froze. "What is that?" Before anyone could react, the eyes moved closer, revealing a figure in the darkness. It was tall, hunched over, and its face was pale and lifeless, like a corpse that had been revived by something unnatural. The figure let out a low, guttural growl and lunged toward them. Episode 7. The Chase. The group screamed and ran for their lives. Their footsteps echoed through the hallways as they sprinted, desperate to escape the creature that had just come to life behind them. But the hospital seemed endless, its halls stretching on forever, each turn leading them deeper into the heart of the nightmare. Mark led the way, but his heart was racing. They needed to find a way out. They needed to escape. Behind them, the creature was gaining ground, its heavy footsteps echoing through the hall. It was fast, and it was relentless. They reached another set of stairs and bolted up them, hoping to find some way to escape. But when they reached the top, they found themselves in a narrow corridor with no exit. "We're trapped!" Rachel cried, tears streaming down her face. Mark turned to face the others. "We need to fight back," he said, determination in his voice. "We can't let it get us." Episode 8. The confrontation. The group backed into a corner, trying to keep their distance from the creature. It circled them, its eyes glowing with hunger. Mark grabbed a broken pipe from the floor and held it out in front of him. "We can't keep running," he said. "We need to stand our ground." Lena picked up a piece of broken glass from the floor, ready to defend herself. "What do we do now?" Before Mark could respond, the creature lunged again. This time, Mark swung the pipe at it, but it was too fast. The creature dodged and slammed into him, knocking the pipe from his hand. Lena screamed and lunged at the creature with the glass shard. It caught her by the wrist and threw her to the floor. Rachel rushed forward, grabbing a piece of broken wood and jamming it into the creature's side. The creature let out a blood-curdling scream and staggered back. Episode 9. The escape. The creature reeled back, its body twitching violently. It seemed to be in pain, but it wasn't finished yet. It turned and charged at them once more. But before it could reach them, the ground beneath their feet shook. The walls began to crack, and the ceiling started to crumble. "We need to get out of here now," Mark shouted. The group didn't hesitate. They bolted down the hallway, running for their lives, as the hospital itself seemed to collapse around them. They reached the exit, and just as they were about to push open the door, the creature's screech echoed one final time. The doors burst open, and they were outside, gasping for breath. Episode 10. The aftermath. The group stood outside, looking at the hospital as it crumbled behind them. It was finally over, but the scars of the night would never fade. They had survived, but the horrors they had witnessed would haunt them forever. As the sun began to rise, they knew they had escaped something far worse than they could have ever imagined. The abandoned hospital had claimed its victims, but they had escaped. For now.